I get squeamish when we talk about they're two different things, cannibalism and crimes with children. And Nathaniel Bar-Jonah checks off both of those.
Well, and that's the thing. Anytime you have stories about kids, and now especially that I have kids, and just hearing all these different, I mean, I just watched the special on Netflix about Gacy, which was pretty, in depth and very graphic involving children. And I think kind of delving into this case a little bit, it's not even kind of the victims that he claims, it's kind of all the ones that he might have had something to do with that he didn't cop to, shall we say, or had any evidence dealing with him and connecting him. But so let's talk a little bit about how this guy came to be and what his history and what his past was, and then we'll get into just the horrific crimes that he committed.
Yeah, over the course of his career, he was responsible for abductions, assaults, molestations, murders, and allegedly cannibalism, which we'll talk to earlier. And all of his victims were children. Before he was one of the more deranged criminals that we've ever talked about on our show, he started like so many other criminals do with a really dysfunctional childhood. We find that everybody we talk about just grew up in such a messed up environment. Occasionally you will get one that, they had seemingly a quote unquote normal childhood and just had a break, but most of them really have a hard time growing up. He was born in Worcester, Massachusetts in 1957, was actually named David Brown. And even his name change is kind of a really weird thing that we can talk about a little later. But when he was 7 years old was when we started seeing these acts of violence. He talked a 5-year-old neighbor girl into his basement to play with his Ouija board. And he climbed on top of her on the couch and started strangling her, using his hands to really try to take her life. His mom caught them and saved the girl's life. He told people the Ouija board told him to do it, and there were no ramifications for that one.
Hold on. So he's 7 years old, asking a 5-year-old to come play with his Ouija board? What kind of a 7-year-old plays with a Ouija board?
There's a whole lot to unpack in that one sentence. But yeah, there's a 7-year-old with the Ouija board, and he uses that as a way to get his 5-year-old victim into the house to potentially sexually assault her and try to strangle her. So there's a lot going on at a really young age. He was kind of the kid in school that, you're probably going to remember for kind of being a little bit odd. His teachers would say that they remembered him like picking scabs off his body and eating them in class. And it was just really freaking everybody out. So, I mean, this kid had a lot going on from a really early age.
I mean, you always had those kids in class, the scab pickers, and just thinking about that grosses me out, and eating them as well. Kind of a step above the guys who just pick their nose and eat it. But I mean, when you're a teacher and you see these types of things, you have to be kind of wondering what's going on. But what year is this? The 60s, the 70s?
Yeah, the early 60s. 1964 was when he tried to strangle the girl with a Ouija board, or at the Ouija board meeting that he put together.
Like, I don't care what decade you're in, though. I mean, that's pretty creepy stuff. And there's always the one kid in class who creeped everybody out. Either he smelled weird, or like you said, he'd have his finger up his nose all the time, or he would pick his scabs, but I didn't know one that actually ate the scabs. Oh, that's gross.
And he continued to do that when he was in prison, and the guards would sit and watch him, and that would creep all the other prisoners out, too. So that was something throughout his life and he would say it had to do with fascinations of eating flesh, and he would do it in front of people.
It's even reported that he would drink his own blood. So even a step further than just eating a scab, like the dude would drink his own blood. So that's just the next level crazy kind of thing.
I think that's something where kids, everybody might try it once or twice, but actually to be doing it in class, like you lick the blood to stop it from bleeding, right? But I mean, this sounds a little bit more in depth than that if you're saying he's drinking his blood.